I'm hungry. Ugh, I hate this. I've been thinking for a while. Catherine, you've put on some weight recently, haven't you? As a housewife who just wastes money, can't you show a little self-control?
My son-in-law mocks me with a sigh. Why do I have to endure such snide comments at Christmas? Saying I'm just a money-wasting housewife, even to me, his mother-in-law. Stunned, I'm lost for words. He seemed pleased with himself.
These fancy appetizers are wasted on Catherine. We'll eat them. Catherine, why don't you have some of your homemade pig slop? Oh, sorry. I mean your home-cooked meal. Or better yet, why don't you go somewhere else?
My name is Catherine, a 50-year-old housewife. My husband Jonathan was my college classmate, and we've been married for 25 years. We have 2 children, our daughter Caroline and our son Robert. Time flies. Both kids have left home, and we were finally enjoying a peaceful life. But everything started to change when Caroline brought someone home.
Pleased to meet you. Thank you for making time for us today.
He greeted my husband and me with a fresh smile. A fine young man. That's my son-in-law, Jack. At the time, our daughter had just started working, but their news made us frown. You want to get married? Caroline, you've just started working. There's no need to rush. My husband nodded in agreement beside me. Caroline looked at Jack.
Actually, Caroline is carrying my child. I swear to protect them both for the rest of our lives. Please, approve of our marriage.
We were shocked by the revelation, but we agreed to their marriage after seeing their earnest plea. A few months later, our granddaughter, Amelia, was born, and Caroline returned home for a while. Struggling with breastfeeding, she looked like she was about to cry. It's okay to raise her on formula, I said, and she seemed relieved. Nowadays, the internet is convenient but also misleading. I guess Caroline got anxious looking up too much about her first time parenting. That's what I always thought. Jack would always stop by to see his wife and daughter after work.
How's the breastfeeding going, Caroline?
My son-in-law's question was met with an apologetic look from my daughter as she explained it wasn't going well.
Just try a little harder. It'll come, I guarantee it.
His baseless assurance made me speak up. Jack, it's okay to use formula. It's nutritious, and if you use it, you can help feed the baby, giving Caroline some rest. His response to my suggestion was,
Don't coddle her, Catherine. That'll just make Amelia dumb.
He said it so matter-of-factly.
Huh?
I blurted out in disbelief at his absurd statement.
In today's world, it's all about merit. Those who aren't smart get left behind. Only the best survive. But I guess a housewife like Catherine wouldn't understand.
He laughed at me in a demeaning way. He seemed so earnest when we first met, but after the marriage his flaws became more apparent. He seemed to rank people, looking down on those he deemed inferior. He probably thought very little of me. It bothered me, but he seemed to care for my daughter and granddaughter, so I tried not to mind it. A month later, Caroline went back to her own home. Our once lively house suddenly became quiet. It's going to be lonely, my husband muttered. So, have you heard from Jack recently? I asked. With a deep sigh, my husband replied, Same as always. He's been contacting less, but he won't listen when I tell him we're fully staffed. What to do? Jonathan, my husband, is a CEO of a fairly large company with a substantial number of employees. After marrying, Jack repeatedly asked to be let into the company, but my husband, worn out, refused every time. When Jack visited our home, he would always stick close to my husband, pouring him drinks. It was clear he was trying to ingratiate himself.
I want to learn for the future,
he said eagerly. Future?
The company is going to be taken over by our son Robert. Focus on what you can do in your current company. Isn't that why you joined them?
Jack quieted down a bit after being firmly rejected, but still contacted my husband occasionally. I chose not to interfere with business matters, but something else troubled me. It was his behavior towards Caroline. Even after her return from maternity leave, I visited her house, which was a short distance away. This house is always so tidy. Caroline, are you getting enough rest? Dark circles were forming under her eyes, and she seemed even thinner than before pregnancy. I warmed up the home-cooked meal I had brought from my house. Jack gets moody when it's messy. This might be the first time I've had a warm meal since coming back here. As Caroline said this, she began to cry. What's Jack doing? What Caroline told me next filled me with indignation. Months later, during the Christmas party, my daughter's family came over.
Merry Christmas!
My son-in-law said, looking straight at my husband, as if I wasn't even there. He had overslept, so it was a bit past lunchtime, but I was ready to serve the food I had prepared in the kitchen. Then my son-in-law came into the kitchen.
Catherine, where's my beer? Hurry up and bring it over.
He seemed a bit tipsy and said it with a mocking laugh. I can't right now. Can't you see I'm busy? The beer's in the fridge. Get it yourself. I replied coldly, which seemed to anger him.
Catherine, you're just a housewife, but you act so high and mighty. You should know your place better,
he said with a sneer. Oh, really? Thanks for the advice, but don't worry about me. My husband is a really smart man who would never say such nonsense. If I had a husband like that, I'm sure his wife would have a hard time. His face turned red with anger.
What's got you so irritated? Oh, are you going through menopause? Or maybe you're just hungry. Huh!
Feeling like I was dealing with a disrespectful elementary school kid, I grew tired. Yes, I'm hungry. Let's just stop this. It's exhausting. Apparently displeased that I ended the conversation, he continued.
You're hungry? Oh, I hate this. I've always thought this. Catherine, you've put on weight, haven't you? As a housewife who just wastes money, can't you exercise some self-control?
How can this man, even as my son-in-law, be so condescending? I was at a loss for words. Looking closer, he was holding a large bag, which I later learned from my daughter contained expensive appetizers he had ordered for him and my husband to enjoy. Thinking he had won because I didn't retort.
How greedy can you get? Huh, these expensive appetizers are too good for Catherine. We'll eat them, and Catherine can have her homemade pig slop. Oh, sorry. I mean her home-cooked meal. Actually, why don't you just go somewhere else?
He said with a laugh. Oh, really? Maybe I should spend this year at my parents' house. Robert didn't want to see you, so he went there too.
Huh? Your parents' house?
Surprised by my sudden comment, my son-in-law looked utterly foolish. Then my husband's voice came from behind.
Then I'll go too. I was thinking I don't want to drink lousy liquor on Christmas anyway. I'd like to ask the chairman for a game of chess. It's been a while.
Perhaps because my husband was closer than he thought, my son-in-law turned a bit pale.
Oh, chairman?
Besides my husband stood Caroline, with the smiling Amelia in her arms. What's this talk? Apologize to Mom. Do you even realize how rude you're being? Caroline has always been a calm person, the type to endure too much. When such people explode in anger, it's frightening. My husband, also of this type, can be terrifying when angry.
Jack, you seem to be under some misunderstanding, but I'm not the one who decided on the successor of the company. It was decided by Catherine's father, the chairman. I'm more like a son-in-law, so I don't have such a right.
Hearing this unexpected truth from my husband, my son-in-law was taken aback.
What? I didn't know that. I thought... It's a lie, right?
He said, confused.
Catherine, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Oh, would you like some of this?
He tried to hand me the bag of appetizers. I don't want it. A menopausal old lady like me will quietly go back to her parents' house and eat pig slop. Don't worry about me. My son-in-law fell silent. Mom got fat because of her illness. You'd see it if you looked around this house. Mom cleans every corner of this house every day for Dad. Being a housewife takes a lot of physical effort. As Caroline said, I had gained weight due to a thyroid condition. Although it's better now with treatment and doctor's advice, to my son-in-law who hadn't seen me in a while, I must have looked like a lazy, fat old lady. Jack, I'll lock the door, so could you leave? Jack's face turned red at my words. Jack, I'm truly grateful that you gave us Amelia, even if it was all arranged. I know everything. You understand what I mean, right? We'll be in touch through lawyers. Please leave. Caroline said calmly.
What? What are you talking about all of a sudden? Caroline, you're suffering from postpartum depression. We're going to the hospital now. Come on, let's go home.
He tried to take Caroline away forcefully, but I yanked her away from him. You're the one who needs to go to the hospital, you fool! Leaving all the child care and housework to Caroline alone. Don't be ridiculous. Enraged by my words, he retorted.
I work hard every day to earn money for Caroline and Amelia. It's only natural that Caroline, who stays at home, does the housework.
Then my usually mild-mannered husband spoke up.
Don't say such absurd things. Who do you think is responsible for the warm meals you eat? The shirts you wear to work that magically clean themselves? It's all because of our daughter, Caroline. It's hard enough taking care of Amelia. Why should she have to take care of you too? Are you a baby? No, you're not.
Scolded by my husband, he quieted down completely. After a while, the designated driver service we called arrived, and my son-in-law left, head bowed. I'm sorry, Dad, Mom, and Amelia. If I knew I would end like this, I should have just raised her alone without getting married. I endured because I thought a father was necessary, but we don't need a father like that. Caroline, who had been holding back her feelings for so long, began to cry, and we, her parents, embraced her. Actually, we had planned to discuss divorce from the beginning that day. Now, all that was left was to proceed through lawyers. We thought it would be straightforward, but life doesn't always go as planned. A few days later, my son-in-law returned to our house bringing 2 companions with him. The doorbell rang incessantly, and when I answered it, Give back Amelia! She is our granddaughter! We can't accept that suddenly Caroline on a whim divorces and we can't see our granddaughter! That was the shrill voice of my son-in-law's mother, Stella, with Jack standing behind her looking smug. A grandchild is not an object. Understood? Then let's settle this once and for all. I ushered the son-in-law's family into the living room. As soon as Stella saw her daughter, she began. Just because your parents are CEOs, don't act so high and mighty. Don't make my son dance to the tune of your capricious whims. My son-in-law's parents were a quiet father and a short-tempered mother. Stella had been bullying my daughter since the day of her marriage, but the daughter who used to shrink back from her mother-in-law's angry shouts was no longer there. Stella, you're always like this. You never listen to me and start yelling. It's loud. We're here to talk, right? Please have a seat. Stella looked surprised by my usually gentle daughter's assertive attitude. Please look at these. If after seeing this, you still think I'm worse than your son, feel free to complain. What my daughter spread out on the table was solid evidence of my son-in-law's infidelity. The photos captured by a detective agency showed my son-in-law and a young woman together in intimate scenes, crystal clear. Jack looked shocked, seemingly under the belief that my daughter, preoccupied with childcare, could never have gathered such evidence. He must have thought her assertiveness at Christmas was just a bluff. What a fool. A fool indeed to do such foolish things, even though he has a wife and child. The woman in these pictures is a recent graduate who joined Jack's company. I was surprised when a friend told me. He said he was working overtime, but he was staying late with this woman. What were you doing at the company, I wonder? My daughter said coldly, glaring at her husband, then played a voice recording. So his wife's pregnancy was intentional? The foolish-sounding voice of a young woman, my son-in-law's mistress. The voice that followed was that of a man standing in front of us, his face turning pale.
That's right. Her parents own a pretty big company. I married into wealth. Once I become CEO, I'll buy you anything you want.
The recording came from a friend of my daughter who worked at the same company as my son-in-law. They had met at a dinner party hosted by his friend, who felt guilty for not knowing his true intentions and helped us gather evidence. The fool bragged as if telling a heroic tale, when he joyfully talked about puncturing contraceptives every time he was with my daughter. I felt nauseous. And that's how my daughter got pregnant and gave birth to Amelia.
If her parents weren't CEOs, who would want such a plain woman? Ah, I can't wait to become the CEO.
My daughter stopped the recording after those words. The room fell silent, overwhelmed by the repulsive truth revealed. If I were my son-in-law's mother, I would slap my son right then and there. But this mother was different. Well, it must have been fate, right? We have to accept it without complaint. As for the childcare, I really wanted it to be all breastfeeding, but we had to compromise. So she was the reason. Stella, excuse me, but was your childcare all breastfeeding? Stella proudly replied, Of course, Jack was exclusively breastfed, and that's why he grew up healthy. I couldn't help but laugh at that. Stella glared at me as if to say, what's so funny? Interesting. So that's why Jack, without any concern for his struggling daughter, could say something so cruel as try harder. He was talking nonsense about formula-fed children being less intelligent. It seems the only person acting foolishly in this situation is your son. Have you noticed that? Stella seemed at a loss for words. Then, Jack's quiet father, Eddie, spoke up.
What's all this about? Jack, this is completely different from what I heard. What do you mean Caroline's being selfish? Apologize right now, you fool!
It appeared that Eddie, too, was the type to bottle up his anger, and he exploded in front of us, scolding the foolish pair.
I'm sorry. Caroline, you're my number one. She's just number two.
As I wondered how foolish he could be. That's disgusting. Don't look at me. Being married and having a number two is unacceptable. If I were really number one, logically number two would be Amelia, right? With my daughter's cold words, the son-in-law and his family stormed out. Afterwards, the divorce between my daughter and her husband was finalized. My daughter said she wouldn't press charges regarding the circumstances of her pregnancy. Pregnancy isn't just the man's responsibility. I can't forgive what he did, but regardless of how it happened, I'm happy to have Amelia with me. We, her parents, didn't argue with her decision. We successfully claimed compensation from both Jack and his mistress, which was duly paid. Due to this incident, both Jack and his mistress were transferred to different regions. His prospects for a bright career diminished, and he was quickly dumped by his mistress. It seems he wasn't competent at work anyway, and he had become the loser in the meritocracy he so valued. Thinking you can easily inherit a position just because you're related is a big mistake. My husband had to work hard to be accepted by my father. Eddie, deeply upset by the whole affair, divorced the hysterical Stella and left the house promptly. They weren't living in their own house, and in a panic, Stella moved in with Jack at his new location. With such a crazy mother, it's unlikely Jack will remarry. Serves you right. Caroline has since become a wonderful mother. Jack had been sending unpleasant messages to our son Robert about not being fit to be the heir. My daughter kept apologizing to our family. We should be thanking you. We're family. Look, Amelia is smiling. Amelia, with her beaming smile, is irresistibly adorable. My daughter plans to return to work soon, and I'll enjoy my time with my granddaughter. I'm looking forward to living a happy life with my beloved family.